Moo. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Book versus Movie, the podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I'm Margot P. of colonialbook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. This is March, and in March we do musicals. And we are doing a major musical today. We're going to be talking about Gypsy. And it's going to be very exciting. I cannot wait. We're barely going to scratch the surface because there's so many wonderful details that go into this particular musical. And we'll get to all of that in a minute. But if you're brand new, yes, this is a podcast where we talk about... Oh, sorry, my dog.
That's okay.
So, someone's walking by. We talk about films that have been adapted from really any kind of original source. As long as it's an adaptation, we will consider it. If it's a novel, a play, a magazine article, short story, fiction, nonfiction, a poem, a song, we will consider it as long as we can get our eyeballs on the original material for cheap or free, and as long as the movie is streaming on a major platform. We are constantly looking for suggestions for new episodes. Coming up, we're still rounding out musicals in March. We're going to have mysteries in May. Later on in the year, we have spooky movies in October, and then holiday movies. So, and then a whole bunch of stuff in between that we need to fill. So, if you have suggestions, if you want to meet other listeners of this podcast or interact with us, there's a few places where you can do that on the internet.
We have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it, but we're much more interactive in our private Facebook group. So you go to Facebook and you type in Book vs Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. And we really do just talk about books and movies there. It's a nice, safe space to hang out. And we also have a couple of posts run by Thaddeus. One is the episodes we've covered in the past, and one is suggestions for future shows. So great places to start. Now, you can also find us at Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Book versus Movie. And in those places, you spell out book versus movie. And then we have an old-timey email, book versus movie podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, we just got a new batch of stickers. So one of us, send us your address and one of us will drop them in the mail for you.
And if you really enjoy the show and would like to help us keep the lights on around here, you can also support us on Patreon.
Patreon. We've actually been doing the show for 10 years now. So we have about 7 years worth of shows on our Patreon wall, putting everything from 2023 and then previous to that up on there. Some of the ones that are up there that you might really enjoy: Elvis and Me, The Parent Trap, Invisible Man, The Bad Seed, Sleeping Beauty. All kinds of those episodes are just for our Patreon subscribers. But you can also sign up for free. And all the clips we show here, we have for free on our Patreon. And we also have some old episodes that are for free on Patreon. So if you want, just go check out our catalog.
Now, when we do a play to a movie, which we did it last week.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done it many times. Now, it just happens, pure coincidence, that last week's episode and this week's episode is each film is based on a Broadway musical, which is based on an actual book. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we'll consider, though, doing an adaptation of just a straight up play like we did with August Wilson. This case, though, we do have a source book. We're going to be talking about 1962's Gypsy, starring legendary Rosalind Russell, Natalie Wood, Carl Malden, come on, and Eensy Weensy and Jillian. It's a living.
Life's not the French Riviera, believe me. Life's not a charity ball. Oh, I know It's a Living. And I'm a big Ann Jillian fan.
It's a Living.
I was 10 when that show was on the air, and I was obsessed with Ann Jillian. I thought she was the coolest, sexiest thing.
She's spectacular.
Ever. And she is.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a minute when we talk about the film, how wonderful she is.
I apologize for the singing, by the way, everybody. But
there's going to be a lot of it. Just buckle up, because just to let you know. We have zero restraint.
This goes right to the pleasure center in my brain.
Oh, yeah. So the musical, the hit musical Sondheim Laurents vehicle, and we'll talk about all that in a minute, was based on the memoir of Gypsy Rose Lee, aka Rose Louise Hovick.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna I was just saying before we got on the air, I did something a little bit different this time because I've already read her memoir, and I also have read the first two memoirs of her sister June Havoc. She changed her name to Havoc when she went to Hollywood. So this time, to prepare, I read the book, the biography of Gypsy Rose Lee called American Rose by Karen Abbott that came out like 10-ish years ago. So I have some other little tidbits that have come up. And before we talk about the memoir, we just to be, if you love this musical as we do, you know they took a lot of liberties, and that's okay because so did the author of the source material.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Miss Gypsy Rose Lee.
So she was born Rose Louise Hovick, as Margos says, January 8th, 1911.
Well,
Ish.
I'm going to stop you right there because yes, not only do we not know when exactly she was born, so their mom, who is yes, okay, yes, there are liberties taken in the show, as we said, but by everybody's account, she was the mother of all stage mothers, for better or for worse. You know, to the point where like she literally may have committed a couple of murders, just a couple murders. Um, so in the Karen Abbott book, there's a picture of her birth certificate, and it shows that when Gypsy, who, and again, we're using the word gypsy,
Right.
not to mean an
Romani
actual
people.
person, a Romani person. This is the term that was applied to her. It meant somebody who never settled down and moved from place to place. And it was her entertainment stage name. So we're going to be throwing it around a lot. Apologies. But anyway, Gypsy's original birth certificate, name on her original birth certificate was Ellen June.
Oh.
Because that was a name that Mama Rose really loved. And then a few years later, when she has dainty baby June, when she has that baby, she's like, oh, no, this baby's Ellen June. And she changes the first Ellen June's name to Rose Louise.
Oh my God.
I know.
Diabolical,
So Mama Rose, I know. So
as the kids
Mama
say.
Rose was very fast and loose with the birth certificates. Would change the girls' birth dates
Mm.
to either make them seem younger or make them seem older to avoid child labor laws because she was putting, especially Junie, she was putting Junie on the stage at like 2.
Mhm.
Um, so so this is what we think. Even they were not completely sure. So yes, this is when we believe that, that Gypsy was born.
Yes, born in Seattle, Washington. A couple of years later, her sister June was born, and June becomes June Havoc, but spelled differently. Rose and I don't know what the deal was with Rose and her husband, but
She was the husband was a he worked for it in the newspaper industry. He was like an ad salesman for the local newspaper and for the Seattle Times.
right.
And yeah, they divorced. It's not really clear. Like, did he leave them? We don't really know quite the details. The sort of legend that evolves is that Rose, Mama Rose, is left by all of the men in her life eventually. Yeah.
Mhm. Right. So she has a few marriages and divorces, but she's mostly obsessed with her daughters, and especially the younger one who's blonde and very cute and has a lot of stage presence. So she takes them on the road. And as Margot said, sometimes she pretends they're older, sometimes she pretends they're younger, just like she said, depending on the room. And they do this vaudeville show around the country, and Baby June becomes really, really popular.
Genuinely becomes a vaudeville sensation. Mama Rose takes June to takes the girls, both the girls, I think, to Pavlova, I believe, to say like, "Look at my girls! Look how talented they are!" And I can't remember if it's she takes the girls around, and they're again, June is teeny tiny. She's like 2, 3 years old. Look at my baby June. She can dance on toe point like ballerinas and look at her go. And every expert that she showed this to was like, yes, your daughter's super talented. get her out of those toe shoes, you're going to destroy her feet. And she'll be able to toe dance for like a little bit, but then never again for the rest of her life. Like, stop it. And Mama Rose was like, la, 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 la. And threw her baby June on the stage in toe shoes, dancing on tippy toe like a ballerina. Again, before she could read, well before she could read. There is, it's very grainy because June also made movies.
Mm-hmm.
She's dragging these kids all over the country, all over the circuit, and June gets cast in a few movies in Hollywood, notably with what's his name? Is it Max Roach? Hal
Yes.
Roach? One of the Roaches.
Roaches. A roach.
One of the little, the R gang guy. And also she gets cast in a movie with Harold Lloyd, who was a humongous deal. And so there is a very, very grainy uh, uh, copy of the movie that she made with Harold Lloyd, which I'm forgetting the name of it just off the top of my head. But we'll put it in the Facebook group. And even though it's super grainy, when she shows up and she does her little ballad, it is magical.
I
Even all grainy and stoppy and jiggity jaggedy with the silent movie, it's pretty spectacular.
She was special. She was absolutely special. And so Gypsy, excuse me, Rose was like her backup, was her sidekick on the stage, and she did things to allow her younger sister to thrive. And so the two of them were on the road, and their mother put them on the road, and they weren't getting a proper education. Now, for Rose, she was very, very smart, very precocious. So she would just we were just talking the other about going to the library and just looking up stuff for fun. Like that's what she would do. And she was a voracious reader and chronicler and a writer. And so they didn't, they were peripatetic. They were going from town to town to town. And then eventually the Stark, they're getting older. These girls are getting older. It's so around the mid 20s. Also, their mother was not a nice person. She, as the stage mother of all stage mothers, she just was not interested in their long-term health benefit.
Yeah.
Comfort. It was everything.
Did not brush their teeth.
Right. Everything's about the immediate. It was just about the gig that night and how much they're going to get paid and then where are they going to go next. That's how she lived. And I can't imagine as a kid, that must have been so stressful.
At one point, June, again, tiny child, comes down with the measles. And they've been invited to some kind of, networky sort of party. And the mom's just like slapping makeup on this kid with a fever and dragging her off to this party. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. It's in the mid 20s and they're all over, they're ping ponging all over the country. Now at this point, Rose is involved with a man named Murray Gordon. And he's really the one who is the guy in the musical is sort of a pastiche of several men, but mainly this guy, Murray Gordon. And Murray Gordon comes along into Rose's life and he's like, yeah, they really should be in school. Rose is, I'm sorry, the names switch around so much, it's hard to keep who's straight. I'm just going to call her Gypsy, even though nobody's calling her Gypsy then. Gypsy is the only one of them who like has any time in school. She does spend a little time in school, but she does enjoy reading, as you said, and she says, I think in her memoir about like how the other kids said she was stuck up because she always had her nose in a book and she kind of
stuck in mud.
Yeah.
Because she did. She was very tall. I think she was just she just carried herself differently. Her younger sister was blonde and dainty and like
and tiny,
tiny and talented. And Gypsy, nobody knew what her talents were. It wasn't in singing and dancing. So and that's all they did. So they didn't really understand. Like she was actually taking everything in, and she was actually a very clever person and could think on her feet really quickly and could say something that could get people interested in her. So her talent was her charisma.
I think the main takeaway, of having read her memoir and June's memoir and now this biography, for me, the big takeaway is both of these girls are, to say nothing of the mom's very resourceful.
Mm-hmm.
But these two girls are extremely intelligent. Both of them, when they talk about their childhoods, in their respective memoirs. It's really impressive. First of all, they're both really good writers. I don't know if they had ghostwriters or what. I do not know. But both of the memoirs are super well written, in my opinion.
They have great editors, if nothing.
True, yes. But they both of them, in their own way, are very aware of everything that's going on around them and are putting pieces together that the adults are trying to keep hidden from them. They're super smart. Both of them are super, super smart. And both of them did different things that they needed to do to survive and get out of that situation. But yeah, I was just really impressed by how bright both of these girls are.
Right. So we're getting to around 1928, and that's when the younger sister, June, marries one of her backup dancers and takes off. And she gives interviews later on, and sometimes she says she was 12, sometimes she says she was 14. The mother, like they said, they didn't really even know how old they were. They weren't like that sure, but they think she was around 16, which was in 1920. That's not really that unusual for someone to do that. So she gets married and leaves. So then it's just Rose and her mother, and they're figuring.
Oh, I was just going to mention. So when June elopes, and again, she's super young. And as Margos said, something we need to know about all three of these women, they all lie, or they all mess with the truth. And it's not just like a Rashomon, she saw it this way, she saw it that way, this person saw it another way. There's this impenetrable fortress of what actually happened that none of them are willing to pry open for anybody.
Evasive.
So as Margos said, like when June would be asked about this early marriage, she was always really evasive about how old she was. She did say that she lied about her age to the registrar person who was doing it, but she doesn't, she could be 12 for all we know.
Right.
And however young she was, I believe this is what happened, that Rose did find them and have them arrested, or have the police get them. And they, similar to the way they talk about it in the musical, like they weren't really able to do anything legally about it. And the police are there with this crazy family situation going on. And Rose, you can imagine, Rose is screaming her head off. And the police officer who's present says, like, okay, listen, it is what it is. Like, it can't be undone. Mama Rose, you got to accept what's going on here. Can we just all make peace as a family and shake hands? And Mama Rose is like, okay, all right. And she, Jerry, the guy's name, I don't know if that's his real name, but
he had a stage name.
Her new son-in-law. Yeah, she would give them all new names. Her new son-in-law reaches out her hand. She pulls out a gun. And the police are like, whoa, no. And in some accounts, she shot him. And in other accounts, she didn't. And the police stopped her. So there's all kinds of bananas rumors that are flying around, and some may be true and some may not be true. There's a rumor at some point that Mama Rose may have pushed a hotel manager out of a window.
Right. That she was a lesbian and ran a boarding house that had lesbian.
That we think is true.
Right.
Yeah, that she definitely does seem to have dallied with women. She did run a boarding house. It does seem to have been a boarding house where a lot of lesbians stayed. Yeah.
Right. And so June has I think she does have her first child with the first husband. Unless I
can't remember. I'll look it up.
They break up around 1932. So this is the Depression. So everything is changing. Movies are starting to take off in America because that's the one place people can all go to afford to get some entertainment. And Gypsy is doing her best to figure out what vaudeville is next. And she and her mother are desperately making a living. June goes on the dance hall circuit. And then they have these contests where you danced until you literally fell to the floor. The last person who made it would make money. And there's a movie called They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Which I saw when I was 10. And
me too. Yeah, traumatized.
So that's I know my brother John used to say, "Why don't you, Margot, cover that one?" I'm like, I don't know if I could do that again.
Oh, I don't think I could. I've never read the book,
No, nor
They
have
Choose
I.
Horses, because I read June Havoc's book, and her account on it is heartbreaking. I
Heart,
mean, it sounds exactly like They Shoot Horses, don't they?
right.
But that is based on a book that was written at the time.
And it's
But, if you've ever seen that movie, that is what June was doing during
and
that time.
America was kind of desperate too. It was just very, very hard times. So Gypsy Rose is like figuring out who she is, and they go on this entertainment circuit, and they're around these strippers that do a striptease, and then they kind of encourage her, "Why don't you give it a try?" And like we said, she did. She wasn't the most beautiful. I mean, I think she was gorgeous personally, but she was. But everything's compared to her younger sister. But she couldn't dance, and she wasn't very that kind of thing. But she could do enough movement to kind of fake what she wanted.
Yeah, and she could
Time,
sing well enough
right. And
when
was
she
a good
needed to.
talker. Was a very good talker.
That's the thing.
And she could connect with an audience, and she could make them just like hang on her every word, every movement. And so she just would get very elaborate with it. And so she then becomes this huge deal. In the meantime, her sister June, like after that circuit, like she eventually gets a career in Hollywood working in films and on Broadway.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And June writes a play. Julie Harris, who was good friends with her, encourages, heard about her story, read her. When Mama June dies, and she dies in the 50s, like 54, let's say, Gypsy writes a biography, and so does her sister. And they both have differing accounts. But in her sister's biography, she talks a lot about those dance competitions. And Julie Harris says, "You should be writing a play about this. And if you do that, I will star in your play." So June wrote a play, and a woman writing a play and being a director of it. And she said, "You need to direct it. You can't trust it to anybody else." And she did. She's the first woman to be nominated for a Tony Award for direction. I mean, these women are fascinating.
They're just so accomplished and so brilliant.
Right.
It's amazing. And so she goes to Hollywood, and we should say also, I mean, it's like the layers upon layers upon layers.
Trying to keep
One of
chronologically.
it's hard to keep it straight. One of June's most famous Broadway roles was in the original production of Pal Joey.
Yes.
With what's your name?
Gene Kelly?
Kelly, thank you. Wow. I've had Gene Hackman on the brains all week, sadly. Oh, wow. So Gene Kelly. And there's a very, very famous number in that Pal Joey musical. I was going to suggest we do it next, but it's like not the greatest story.
Yeah.
But there's a very famous number that is literally about Gypsy Rose Lee. Like it's not like, oh, it's a woman who's no, it's actually about Gypsy Rose Lee. Mentions her by name. And June is in this musical. And in Hollywood, she makes a number of films, and she's terrific.
Good.
She's really good.
And stars with Rosalind Russell in one of those films.
In the original version of My Sister Eileen, which was later done a few times. Most notably, it was made in I think in the 60s, and it starred Bob Fosse. Like I love that movie. But in the original non-musical version one, Rosalind Russell is the star. And June Havoc is in a scene with her. Has a really cool role in this particular scene with Rosalind Russell that is just great. So a lot of worlds colliding.
Spider webs, as they say in trashy divorces.
Definitely.
Lots of spider webs. So then we go into the 50s. Rose dies. They both write their books. And Gypsy knows everybody. They all know everybody in entertainment. And
they all know everybody.
Hooks up with I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the names right of like who was a part of we have Stephen Sondheim as the lyricist. And he was
just Stephen Sondheim.
And he worked on West Side Story. And he said, "Oh, I want to do the music and the lyrics." And they said, "Ease up, kid. You know, you're pushing yourself. You do the lyrics, Jule Styne will do the music." And so it becomes this musical, and then it's very popular.
It's a mega hit.
It's a huge hit.
Ethel Merman. And the music, I'm sorry, but the music is very Sondheim-y. Da 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 da. I mean, that's so Sondheim.
In the best sense.
In the best sense.
Yeah.
Ethel Merman is like, I should say, like when the for most of the show, if we're putting people in time, and we only ish know how old everybody is at any given time.
Mhm.
Mama Rose is around, I had to go and like look at all the dates. Mama Rose is around 30 when the show opens. She's in her 30s for most of the show. Ethel Merman is around 50 when she's playing this. And Ethel Merman is 1 year younger than Rosalind Russell. So, but we were just saying before we got on the air that we've all seen so many films, TV appearances of Ethel Merman singing "Everything's Coming Up Roses." I don't even know how to begin to talk about Ethel Merman. Like, she was such a juggernaut of Broadway. Never wore a mic.
Right, because she's a belter. And so
Yeah.
she could definitely like reach the seats. She was married to Ernest Borgnine for a while.
Briefly.
They had that was a whole thing. She would go and talk about that. Ooh, they hated
Famously
each other.
in her memoir, in Ethel Merman's memoir, there's a chapter called Ernest Borgnine. It is one page and it is blank.
Oh, I love that shade. That is next level petty that I appreciate.
But we talked about her a little bit. We talked about Valley of the Dolls because the Helen character in Valley of the Dolls is based on Ethel Merman. But she had such a long career.
Mm-hmm.
And we always, when we get to see her, we only ever get to see her singing. So we don't ever really get to see her acting.
Right.
But I got to think she was pretty good, right? I mean, you got to be pretty good.
Loved her. She played, I mean, this show was very popular right away. And these songs, I could just like, but these songs are amazing. And Jerome Robbins was the director and the choreographer, and he's like one of the best that's ever been. But
the show, I'm going to say the show is really about Rose. It's called Gypsy, mm-hmm. But the Gypsy, the person who moves around from place to place and never settles down, is actually Rose. It's not actually Louise or June. The real Gypsy is Rose, if we're using it in that sense of the word, in the early 20th century sense of the word. And that's a role that like all the ladies of Broadway want to play. Any woman who has ever been on Broadway, you ask her what role she wants to play, she always says Mama Rose. We were just saying too that we've all week long, we've been watching the clips of all the Mama Roses that we can get our hands on. Tyne Daly was spectacular. Patti LuPone, of course. Of course.
I saw that. I was there in 2008. And
Patti LuPone, I feel like, is our Ethel Merman. That she's just in all the things, right?
Absolutely.
Angela Lansbury. Do yourself a favor, look up Angela Lansbury as Mama Rose. Imelda Staunton recently did it in Britain. Like I said, that I just watched that performance. It's a little. It's what did you say? Wait, what did you say about the British when they do American?
Pick a coast.
Yeah, pick a coast
and try to do that. And it's
where are we?
Where are we? Where are you from? What? And we love Imelda Staunton, right away. We talked about it when we talked about Harry Potter.
Oh, she does a great Mama Rose.
Right.
She's great. She's terrific. Who else? Bernadette Peters.
Who's a goddess. I mean, beautiful and talented. Beautiful. And her voice is incredible too.
But women
in their 40s wanting this part.
Of course.
Because this is the juicy.
It's a wonderful role. It's a juicy, meaty role. And it's all about her. Everybody is navigating her. And she has all the best songs. So yeah. You played in our Facebook group a clip from the Gypsy Rose Lee television show. She had a talk show. She was wonderful on her talk show. And she has
and
really good at it, really good at the rapport with the guest and allowing the guest. I've watched every clip that there is of that talk show and I love it. But she has one episode where she's got Ethel Merman on and they're talking about the role of Mama Rose. And another thing I love about Ethel Merman, never did plastic surgery, did not believe in plastic surgery. She was like, I've lived the life I've lived. This is the face. This is what it is. And she speaks about Mama Rose with so much she really loves that woman, right? You could tell, like, she really empathizes and really is a champion of Mama Rose that I think must have been so great to see on stage. I found a recording, and I'll put this in our Facebook group. I just found it, like, right before we got on the air. There's an audio recording. I don't know who made it, in what corner of the theater they were hiding. Somebody made a brief audio recording of Ethel Merman performing Mama Rose for the final time on Broadway, and I mean, I got goosebumps. It's so good, and then when you think that
Wait,
she is not wearing a microphone,
I,
oh my goodness.
I said to Margot, there's somebody put on from 2007 the production with Patti LuPone and Laura Benanti. Like, I think she's our modern day Ethel Merman. Whatever.
She's really good. I loved her
Everything.
in that.
And Boyd Gaines as Herbie. I mean, but there was somebody in the audience, I think, took their phone or took just a camera, and like every once in a while, it's great to watch, but every once in a while they're like hiding it, and then they bring it up again. And Patti LuPone's voice reaches so far, and her gestures, and you could tell she really believes that. This is just one of the best parts ever, I think, for an actor. I can't imagine how
It
much
really
fun it is. Should we
So
play
in
the
the
clip?
original I just wanted to mention that with the rest of the cast in the original Broadway show,
Yes, please.
because we're so excited about Ethel Merman, let's not forget Jack Klugman played Herbie. Oh my goodness, how of course, like Jack Klugman and Ethel Merman. Oh, I would have given anything. And there's no clip. I could not find any clips. If you all find clips of Jack Klugman singing Herbie,
Please let us know.
tell us. Please tell us. Sandra Church played Louise. There was somebody else that they were considering for the role. Let me think. She was up against, hold on. She was up against, give me a second, sorry. It's somebody we know. Gypsy. Suzanne Plachette.
Oh, I've heard of her.
So Suzanne Plachette and Sandra Church were up for the role of Gypsy. The producers were like, whoa, Suzanne Plachette is such an amazing actress, which she was. But Sandra Church was the better singer.
Yeah.
So they ultimately gave it to Sandra Church because it is all of these parts are vocally very demanding.
Right. We should say Audra McDonald, by the way, is in the current version now, and it's an African-American cast, so they've changed it a bit, and it's been a huge hit, Margot. Like, everybody in New York's talking about it.
Every clip I saw looked great.
They couldn't even perform because she's another like mega talent in our time. We're way too lucky to have this happen. So so in 1960, she was nominated for a Tony Award. They won for Best Musical Theater Album, but all of the performers, everybody was nominated. I wonder what was like the big production that year. But we have I found a clip of Ethel Merman on, I believe it's the Perry Como show, and we'll play that now. Once again, if this is getting chopped up in our big YouTube clip about this episode, just follow, get our Patreon or follow one of us on YouTube or whatever, and you can find them for yourself.
You'll find it.
Now, all I need is a girl. And that girl, ladies and gentlemen, is the star of the Broadway musical Gypsy, singing Everything's Coming Up Roses, exactly as she does it in the show, Miss Ethel Merman.
It's gonna come true, baby. They think that we're through, but baby, you'll be great. Gonna have a whole lot of fun.
I mean,
Just try and stop her. Just try and stop her. Another thing about Ethel Merman is she owned Broadway. Let's be clear. So many hits. Annie Gets Your Gun. Anything Goes. I mean, I've seen some. How amazing must that have been to see Ethel Merman blow Gabriel? How amazing. I guess I saw Patti LuPone in Anything Goes back in the day, and
she just is. Oh my God.
And when these smash hit musicals eventually were developed into Hollywood movies, you would think they would want the person who put the role on the map, who was still completely capable of singing these very, very difficult parts. Nope. Every single time. We're going to do Anything Goes. Oh, not let's who can we get that's like Ethel Merman? Oh, we're going to do Annie Get Your Gun. Who can we get that's going to do it like Ethel Merman? And here we finally have this incredible role of Mama Rose. Ethel Merman is again, she's a lot older than Mama Rose actually was at the time, but she's still totally appropriate for this role. Doesn't get it. Oh, and she's been told by the movie producers, absolutely, Ethel, this role is yours.
Right.
She thinks she's going to do it, and then they yank it out from under her. Oh.
I'm based in New York. Margo lived in New York for a while. I mean, we have our Broadway stars, and we always are like, well, they're famous, aren't they? Because everybody knows how amazing, talented these people are. But we forget, like, not everybody gets to Broadway. Not everybody gets to the theater unless they do the talk show circuit and they perform live. Quite often, you don't get to see this. So when the suits in Hollywood are just like, yeah, but is she sexy? We need her to be a little sexy because it's a movie. So they get Rosalind Russell, who I'm not mad about this because I'm a huge Rosalind Russell fan.
Well, I will watch her do anything.
Anything. She could read the phone book. I would be fine with it. I'm sure she would make it.
Can she sing like Ethel Merman?
No. That's not her strength. She can do the physical comedy. She can do, like, carrying the bags around and bossing everybody on the stage. Nobody can do it better than Rosalind Russell. She's so believable. It's when she starts to sing that it's a little, you do kind of miss it a little bit.
Yeah. But it was an interesting choice, I felt like. So let's talk about, so it's 1962. Oh, we forgot to mention Arthur Laurents. We talked about Stephen Sondheim when we talked about West Side Story. We talked about Arthur Laurents when we talked about La Cage aux Folles when we did the Birdcage.
Right, that's right. That's what I was trying to remember where I knew him from. Yeah, La Cage aux Folles, that was a fun one.
He is much older than this is a very young Arthur Laurents at this point. So we have Rosalind Russell, Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood, we've talked about numerous times. West Side Story, Miracle on 34th Street. Carl Malden, another one I just like, Jack Klugman, that is just like, oh, my heart. I just love them so much. And we're Technicolor, our costumes.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a moment of silence for the costumes of Gypsy, designed by none other than Ori Kelly, who we've also talked about numerous times. My favorite Ori Kelly turn at costumes is Now Voyager, when we talked about Now Voyager.
Oh, yes.
Those costumes. His career, go look up all the I don't even know, maybe over 100 movies. He's done so many movies, the costumes, several that we've talked about in the past, but the one that really sticks in my mind is Now Voyager, because it's just jaw-dropping. These costumes are absolutely gorgeous. I love Herbie's suits, all of the different vaudeville performers and their costumes, the strippers, Miss Zeppa, Miss Electra.
I love that section.
And the way that we progress with Gypsy's costumes as she's starting out and then becomes more and more and more famous. How the silhouettes change, and also it's getting later in the history, of course. Silhouettes change, the luxuriousness of the materials progress, and just like the first time she goes on stage and she's got that gorgeous blue dress, but it's a simple blue dress that it does look like she could have made herself. And the mom gives her the opera gloves, and they're a little dingy, and they're stretched out, and they're, like, falling off of her, to the end of the movie where she's got these bespoke satin gloves. Stop it.
It's
The
gorgeous, and
the
she's so beautiful. I
she's
mean,
so
she's
pretty.
heartbreakingly beautiful. Like when she's playing the tomboy, and she's got like a crappy
The
wig
little
on,
page boy, oh,
and she still is like this gorgeous face, and and she could sing and she could dance.
yeah.
She's fine in the production, I think.
I think so too, you have to it's funny because it's the opposite choice that they make for film than they do for stage. They decide, and I think it was the right choice. They decide we need to choose acting ability over singing ability. So, and not that I'm not saying that Ethel Merman can't act. I'm just saying, also we should also say Ross had a really powerful husband. Rosalind Russell at the time was married to a very, very powerful man who made a pretty shrewd deal to get Rosalind Russell this role. She really wanted this role, and did a 2-picture deal on the condition that this was one of them. And that's how they yanked the role out from under Ethel Merman, who never forgot it and
No.
always referred to Rosalind's husband as the Lizard of Roz.
I was saying to you, I love her in Airplane. There's a scene where
It's
one of the pilots is out because he thinks he's Ethel Merman, and then she all of a sudden goes, "You'll be swell." She's in this mental hospital.
Remember when she was on Love Boat? She was Gopher's mom.
I watch Love Boat on Paramount Plus all the
God
time.
bless that woman.
Ugh.
She
That's why
gave
I
us
wasn't
so
like
much
old-time movie
entertainment.
stars. I used to I watched because they were on that and
Ginger
Fantasy Island.
Rogers would be
All
on
of them.
there.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Sid Caesar, like all these people. I was like, oh, I know who they are from the Love Boat. But yeah,
Yeah.
she's just spectacular. Should we play the trailer for?
Yeah, let's play our trailer.
The fabulous Gypsy Rose Lee. Gypsy, starring Rosalind Russell, Natalie Wood, Carl Malden, and the wildest bunch of characters in or out of show business. Kringeline the Indignant, Carolyn the Dancing Cow, the High Mogul with Low Intentions, the Hollywood Blondes, and the most mama any girl ever had.
This time I'm gonna make you a star, baby.
You're gonna take it away from me!
So the part of the trailer, it's a great trailer, but the part of the trailer where they introduce the cast, Rosalind Russell and Natalie Wood and Carl Malden, is that's a scene that was cut from the film. And it's a very famous number that Ethel Merman would blow the roof off of the joint every night on Broadway. Wherever we go, it's that number, which is not in this movie.
Which is weird because it's a very famous number, but we know why.
We know why. So here's the thing. Natalie Wood, this is after West Side Story. And she always felt kind of not great about the fact that she was dubbed in West Side Story. And it's beautiful singing.
Marnie Nixon. I mean,
it's Marnie Nixon, but she doesn't sound like Natalie Wood. Like, it sounds like a completely different person. It really does. And Rosalind Russell, not known to be a singer. Also, this is after Auntie Mame. And she wants to do her own singing too, but she is just not Ethel Merman, and this is an Ethel Merman role. It is a very difficult role. So what they do with they let Natalie Wood sing her stuff, for the most part, and it's not as challenging. I think they arrange it a little more, kindly for her voice, and I think it works great because she's acting it to death, so it's great. Rosalind Russell, they bring somebody in, and I forget her name.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll find
somebody
it.
that dubs just the high notes for her.
Right.
So Rosalind Russell has a very gravelly, kind of Elaine Stritchy kind of a voice. And for the most part, it works.
Lisa Kirk.
Thank you, Lisa Kirk. And for most of the movie, it works because she's acting so much. She's just doing so much with her acting that we're just in it with her. I totally buy her chemistry with Carl Malden. I think it's so good. I love her with the children, and we'll talk about Jillian in a second. But so they have Lisa Kirk dubbing the high notes, and they do a super good job in this film. I think much better than in West Side Story with the dubbing. That you have to really, really know that that's what's going on and be listening for it. Otherwise, you don't. It doesn't. It doesn't announce itself so much in this movie. And I've been thinking about this a lot because the thing about Mama Rose, I'm so sorry. I keep wanting to call her Mama June, and that's the mom from Honey Boo Boo, and I apologize. I did that in the Facebook. I didn't even catch it. Somebody else caught it. I was like, oh, yeah, that's Honey Boo Boo. Sorry, guys. Mama Rose. The thing about Mama Rose, when it's Ethel Merman, and she comes right out, at the very, very beginning when you first see her, and she's, that's fine for some people, right? You think from the beginning, from the moment that that Mama Rose opens her mouth and sings in the Broadway version, I'm sure, because I've seen it in the other, this is what you think when you see Patti LuPone or Bernadette Peters or Tyne Daly. You go, wow, Mama Rose can really sing.
Audra
Would have
McDonald.
really been Audra McDonald. She would have been amazing. She should have been on the stage. You, the audience, think that immediately. With Rosalind Russell, you don't. With Rosalind Russell, you're like, this is a stage mom. This is stage mom. And it's not until near the very, very end of the film when she finally sings the big number, Mama Rose's Turn. And she's doing the striptease moves. Then you go, oh, she does have a little sizzle in there. Like, look at her go. So that's a very different kind of an experience of that character that we, the movie audience, are having. And it's just as valid versus the stage version. Because these are very belty numbers. They're big, big vocal numbers. But it works. I think the two things that have to work for this show to fly don't hinge on the character of Louise. I think of course Mama Rose, because she is the central character.
Right.
You have to, as you're horrified at the decisions that she makes, you have to be on her side to a certain degree from the beginning. Like when she's singing to her dad that she's going to get out on the road, and he's telling her, no, settle down and get married, which is the smart thing for a woman at that age, at that time to do.
Sure, yeah.
On Rose's side for her to take those kids and go on the road. The other thing that I think you have to is a spectacularly talented June. And when I see productions of this where it's like a little off, it's because they haven't, not that the actress playing June isn't great and super talented. It's that they haven't invested enough in selling us the extraordinary talent of this little girl. And who plays June on the original Broadway production? I forgot.
I'll look that up.
Okay. And if you don't have it, like I was just saying, I was watching, and I'm going to criticize the Imelda Staunton one yet again. I was watching the Imelda Staunton one, and there's a lot of really good stuff about that production, including I think Imelda Staunton is wonderful as Mama Rose.
Lane Bradbury. Sorry, Margo. That's who.
Okay, Lane Bradbury.
I'm trying to find like a a famous June, and I'm not really finding them in the stage. I mean, they're all awesome characters, but
they're all really good, but it really is about like how the production this show is selling. We have to believe that she is a star that this whole family can hitch their wagon to, right? In the Imelda Staunton one, the June is done as a very insipid kind of character. She should when we meet her for the first time, and we see her do this number over and over again in the show. But the very first time when she comes out and says, "Hi everybody, my name's June. What's yours?" You're supposed to buy it. You're supposed to be like, "Oh, June? Margot." Right? But when we meet June in the Imelda one, which is one of the more recent ones, and she's like, she's really playing up the in a way that is not. So, how much do we love Aunt Jillian?
okay. So much.
The unsung hero of this film. If Anne Jillian were not the star that she is, this whole thing would come apart at the seams.
And she's like 12 when she's doing this. I mean, she's very young. So she's playing a little younger and a little older. She's going to be taking off with one of the dancers. Right. I think the next clip is, it's called Dainty June, which they had to change to Dainty Claire for a little bit because June Havoc wasn't signing off on this, but they brought it back to Dainty June. And
we don't quite know what the circumstance of that was that brought June Havoc around. We'll talk about that after this clip. So
I just noticed the monkey in the corner.
The monkey, yeah.
Oh my God.
So they famously, they would travel with monkeys and pigs and all kinds of chickens, and they would shack up in these entertainment hotels all over the country with this menagerie of animals. Murray Gordon, the boyfriend, what would we call him, a boyfriend of Mama Rose that Herbie is based on, he did convince Rose to bring in these boys to be the backup dancers for Dainty June. They would travel the country. Again, this is depression, right? They would travel the country and find these families with too many mouths to feed, basically, and say, "Hey, your boy looks talented. How about we let him into our act? We won't pay him, but we'll feed him, and the experience will last him a lifetime."
It's like an internship.
Very much. And they would bring on these ragtag kids that they would find like maybe dancing in an alleyway or something. In the Abbott book that she talks about, there's this one kid who has he only speaks Italian and he sings in Italian, but he has something like malnutrition. And so his legs are not quite, he can't dance with them. He can barely walk with them, but they would put him like over in the side. So his voice would be there, but not his dancing. So they would travel with all of these boys, smuggle them into the hotel because they always had way more people and certainly way more animals than they were allowed to have in these hotels. And they did that for years and years and years.
And it was they would take, you could only have a certain number of people in a room because of fire hazards and stuff. They never paid attention to that. They would just like her daughters are in the room with all these boys. Like everyone's just sleeping and camped out with their menagerie of pets everywhere. And then she'd take a hot plate and cook Chinese food for everybody. It sounds like fun to me, but if you're young, you don't know better.
For a minute.
Yeah. I mean, if you're young, you also don't know better. You're just kind of like, this is all you know. So this is what you do. But I think later on you might think, God, that's really not the most stable upbringing.
Yeah. And June runs off. Now, June. So as we said, both June and Louise write their memoirs after their mom has passed.
Because she would have sued them, by the way. Because she
would have sued them just for a buck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if it had been completely accurate and she was completely thrilled with it, she would have sued them just for a buck. Having said that, like June could easily have sued and stopped this show from ever seeing the light of day. She doesn't. They do, as you said, for a moment, they change the name of the character to Claire. But only not for long. Eventually it is June, and it is June in this movie. And June, again, every one of them is an unreliable narrator, right?
Mhm.
Karen Abbott, when she worked on this book, she spoke to, among other people, she interviewed Eric Preminger, Gypsy Rose Lee's son,
Yeah.
and she interviewed June. June was still alive when she wrote the book.
June lived to 97, by the way.
Yes. A fascinating woman.
Very.
June, having, especially because she did live so long, she outlived everyone for so many years, had multiple opportunities to dispel myths, set the record straight, talk about why she didn't sue her sister for this show, talk about how she felt about the show. She always would sidestep it, you know. And people would literally say to her, "So, June, the show, people mostly know about you from the show, and are there any myths that you would like to dispel?" And she'd be like, "Nah." And no one else was around to. I don't know if she signed an NDA. I don't know.
No, she didn't
But
sign an NDA. She wouldn't. That's what's
but she
hilarious
just
is
didn't talk about it.
she just let it go. I
She
think
easily could have, but what she has, I think we do have her saying it here and there, and I think this is really sad. This has to do with, I think, again, the kind of direction that we have. She felt that the show, or she has said on some occasions that she felt that, one, the show made her mom look like a monster, which I'm sorry, but she kind of was.
yeah.
I mean, that really cleaned up what we do know on record about this woman.
Hmm.
And she does really seem to have murdered the possible girlfriend from the boarding house.
Hmm.
But she also felt that the show made her look like a spoiled brat who got everything that she wanted. And I don't think that it does.
I don't either, but I grew up in a family of 4 kids, and my mother had 4 kids in 5.5 years. We all grew up together, and you can ask one of us, what was happening in Christmas at this time? And we would all give you a different answer. We were in the same room. We had the same parents, went on the same vacations, everything. So that's just life. I mean, people just do have their own ways of interpreting things.
And I think it has to do with who's directing this show.
Mhm.
Because I've seen versions of this where they do play June as if she's some kind of a spoiled brat, but they were all starving.
Yeah.
And
She didn't have a lot of options.
the only reason, it's not like Baby Jane, that's a completely different scenario. If we talk about whatever happened to Baby Jane and that book, and it's totally in that story, she is completely spoiled. The parents totally focus on the
Mhm.
one over the other, even though she's just as talented. In this case, and in this musical, not just in life, but in the musical, they're all starving together. They're all struggling. And the only reason they are even alive and have clothes on their backs is because this little girl is super mega talented. And when you don't portray her as that, then she does come off looking spoiled rotten, and then she just runs off and leaves them. But that's not, if you actually watch the show or read the script and watch this film, especially this film version, I think is really true to that.
Mhm.
You see that she was the one who was chafing under this whole situation more than anybody, and was really getting the short end of the stick more than anybody,
Mhm.
because they were all completely dependent on her for everything, a tiny child. And fortunately, she was very, very smart and very, very talented. And yes, a lot of young women got married in those days to get out of the house.
Absolutely. You can't get a credit card. You can't. I mean, there's lots of things. Being married was the better option. It was your chance
Mhm.
of like living a longer life, really.
Yeah. And that, I think, is really sad. I wish that she felt, and maybe she did and she just didn't express it, but I wish that June could feel like, wow, this really shows what a survivor I was, and how really talented I was, and how the hard work that I put in really got me through some really, really difficult times and a lot of challenges in life. She remains so beautiful. Uh, the very last, she loved animals. She saved a small Connecticut town.
That's right. She rebuilt the downtown area, and then she created a theater, and then she invited African-American kids to like join this theater group. She was contributing back to society because she felt it saved her life,
Yes.
the theater.
Yes. There, you just reminded me, there's a the Abbott book is so fascinating. There's so many interesting details. It doesn't just talk about that family. It also gives you a lot of the context, the historical background, what was going on in vaudeville, what was, the America during the Depression and all of that. But one of the things it talks about is how when the family were really working the vaudeville circuit and they were really going all over the country and they were just dragging these kids all over the place, they often would play, and it's alluded to in the show and the movie. They would play for, the Elks Lodge. They would play for, so-and-so's private party. They also would play for houses that were definitely places that were segregated. And there's an account of them playing in like a kind of like an Elks Lodge. I forget exactly what it was. After the performance, one of the bigwigs invites, beckons to June to come over here, and I want to give you something, and he gives her a gold necklace with a charm on it that says KKK.
Oh my God.
And she said, so this is something that June told Karen Abbott because she interviewed her. And she said that June said that even though she was a tiny little girl and didn't understand what that meant, that it just gave her the ick. Like they're just chilling. And she just didn't like it, didn't want it, and they just got out of there. So that was something that they encountered and saw a lot of. And I'm sure, like I said, these were very bright, observant girls, super intelligent,
and very worldly. You have to think, like going from
absolutely,
town to town,
both
like
of
through
them.
their both of them through their growing up years. So that's her way of giving back. Was she wanted to? So she helped rebuild this town to the way it was, and then she had this theater, and she opened it up for Black kids in order to just fascinating woman, just really, really interesting. Should we? There's a clip of Natalie Wood singing Lamb, which I really like.
I think it's so good.
Let's
Let's play it. Wonderful. She's singing that live on the set.
Right.
So that's because in film we're up close in people's faces. It doesn't need to play to the back of the house in the same way.
Right.
It's a different kind of acting.
It helps that she has the little lamb in her arms too.
Oh my gosh, that lamb is so cute.
I would want one so bad. My mom grew up with lambs and goats. She said they were the best.
And you really buy her as a little girl. We see her even younger than this, and we totally believe it. I really love the little girls that are playing them even tinier. The tiniest version of them are so cute. But once we see Anne Jillian and Natalie Wood, and they're great together, I buy them as sisters. You really get that they love each other. You don't get that she's a spoiled brat. That that they really love each other, and they're really looking out for each other, and they really believe in each other. But June, who could go on like that? Of course she's going to leave.
Right.
She should leave. Okay, maybe don't marry this one guy. And it's not really clear if her one child is the child of that first husband or not.
I think she said it was the guy that was the manager of the dance contest that she was in. That's who it was.
Yeah, I love the way this movie is done, and it's cast so Carl Malden.
Mm-hmm.
And you really buy that he loves these girls and he really worries about the boys in the act.
And then he loves Rose too.
And that you really buy that he loves Rose, and that he loves her enough to not enable her anymore, and to take a stand and walk away. And it's heartbreaking when he finally leaves. I just think it's super well done. The only thing is that, Rosalind Russell is not able to vocally carry the role, and they work around it in a way that I think is really good. And as much as fun as that Together song is, and arguably as integral to the story as it is, it's really not a good number. Like they are really struggling. And the numbers that they leave in are the best numbers that she does. And it still works. And do we want to play? Let's see. How about let's play Everything's Coming Up Roses, and we'll get a little touch of Rosalind.
Yeah.
Ethel Merman must have wanted to just burn the whole town of Hollywood.
I'm sure she was like, but there is something Rosalind Russell brings to that
she really does.
It's her height, it's her bearing, it's the way that she comports herself and presents herself.
It's just her acting. You buy she loves this child. Yes, she does. And she loves Herbie, but she is so on the wrong track. And yes, it's a very echoey desert. Okay, fine.
So what?
It's pitched way down, for her gravelly voice. But yeah, I still buy it. Instead of it's a totally kind of different take on Mama Rose, as we've been saying, where instead of thinking, and up until this point, instead of thinking like, wow, Mama Rose really should have gone on the stage, what we're thinking instead is, wow, Mama Rose doesn't have any talent either. Right? You're like, yeah, too bad she doesn't have the talent to make it on the stage herself. It's a different take, but it totally works.
Mm-hmm.
And you really believe that like her whole heart is in this, but it's in so the wrong place. It's not going to go well. Like at this point, you are literally at the end of the line, lady. We're not. It's not going up. We're not going up. Not from here.
I wanted one of the actors that Morgan Brittany played Baby June. That's before and Jillian took over, and she was in a lot of 80s stuff. She was just like very beautiful. But then there was like an adult film actress that took the opposite name. Like her name was Morgan Brittany, so she called herself
Brittany Morgan. That's unfortunate.
Which is. But anyway, they asked her what was it like to work with Natalie Wood, and she said it was amazing. She said, but also I never saw her without a cigarette. Apparently, she was
really.
And on the set, they were kind of telling her, like, if you want to be a singer, you can't do that. But I think also as an actor, she wanted to keep thin. That was like And she's wearing these very skimpy clothes, like it's
extremely form-fitting.
Yeah. And she's only 5'2", so you can only eat so much when you're like that size. I mean, so I kind of get it, but I also just Natalie Wood. There was a documentary about her on HBO a couple of years ago, and her daughters are the executive producers of it. And there's a whole thing with Natalie Wood. People talk about like when Natalie Wood was young, she fell off a pier and she broke her wrist, and she's always afraid of dark water ever since. And it's always when they talk about Natalie Wood, she was afraid of dark water and then she drowned. Oh my God. And one of her daughters, I think it's Natasha, who said, yeah, she didn't like dark water, water she couldn't see in. Who likes that? Like who else? I mean, like, it's like, yeah, that's actually a good point. Like nobody would like, but it's just part of those, unfortunately the way she passed away is sometimes overshadows who she was as a person. And I love watching this old stuff with Natalie Wood because she was so talented and beautiful. And she was a very kind person, apparently, from people telling me, and very forward-thinking, progressive. She had a lot of gay friends and she took care of them. She's just She's amazing, and I think she's great when she comes out and it's her first time on stage stripping, and she's so scared, and she's so like, she just sells it really well. She's an absolutely amazing actor.
She really is. She really, really is. And I feel like it sounds weird to say because again, the show is called Gypsy. But I feel like in the stage versions, at least the ones that I've seen, that character does not have quite the depth that it does in this movie because Natalie Wood,
Yeah.
and it's partly because we see her she's acting such a range of ages. So there is a continuity there that is only broken at the very, very beginning, like where, as you said, when the Natalie Wood and Jillian become those characters. So she really brings. I'm sure Gypsy Rose Lee. I hope Gypsy Rose Lee must have loved this film. I hope she did. I didn't say anything where she talked about the film. I saw her talk about the musical and how she went on and on. Of course, she was making money on it.
Yeah.
The thing about Gypsy Rose Lee, everybody says about Gypsy Rose Lee, including her son, that that woman loved her some money. And every dime she made, she kept for herself. She did not lavish on her son. Like, didn't even pay for her son's education.
No, she didn't.
And
kind of like that attitude. I was your age. I was working. I was supporting myself.
yeah. So of course she's going to, big up the show, but the show was tremendous, of course. But I never saw anything where she talked about the film and what she thought about the film. I wonder too, because she had Ethel Merman on her television show, if that was her way of taking sides in that debate. Which I get. I totally get. She must have had a favorite version, and it had to have been the stage version, of course. So I don't know. I don't know what she ever thought about it. I never saw anything where she talked about. Did she talk about it in the memoir? I don't even remember.
No, I don't remember. Well, the memoir, this is based on her memoir. So it was a couple of years after she published the memoir. So it's not like she had a lot of time to.
Oh, of course. Then she wouldn't have talked about it at all.
Reflect on it. No, but I like that clip. And you could find it on our Facebook page or on our Patreon for free. It's her interviewing her in like 1967. And somebody gives her, it's around her birthday, and somebody gives her a gift. And she goes, oh, look, I got a necklace. And then she takes out, and it's a bunch of sausages on a string. And she just wraps it around her neck like it's a shawl. And Ethel Merman's sitting right there. Like, I posted this on my TikTok, and somebody wrote back right away, like, thank you so much for posting this. This is making me so happy. She
was wonderful as a talk show.
Oh my gosh.
I think maybe just because she became ill.
She died. So she dies in 1970 at 59. From lung cancer. And it happened very quickly, apparently, like the time she was diagnosed until she passed away. So yeah, she had this exciting life, and then she went out in a blaze of glory. I mean, she was still at her peak. She was still just figuring it out. I mean, I would have loved for her to live a very long time and see what else she would have done, if she followed up that book or what.
Well, but she also wrote fiction, as we said,
yes.
she an accomplished writer.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I had something I was going to say. Oh, we didn't mention, if you want to get an idea of what her act was like, a very cleaned up idea of what her act was like, she does a version of it in Stage Door Canteen during World War II. That famous, I don't know if you've ever seen Stage Door Canteen with all the, so I think this was a thing they actually did in Los Angeles during the war. There was I don't think it wasn't a USO or maybe it was a USO, but it was a place, like a USO where all the servicemen who were in town in Los Angeles could go. They would be welcomed in. They would be, they would get coffee and dancing and so on. But it was staffed by Hollywood stars. Mm-hmm. So the different actresses would go, and Joan Crawford would go,
Eddie Davis.
They both did. They would serve drinks down at the Stage Door Canteen. And there's a film made of, it's a fictionalized version of it, of course. Not the most PC thing ever. Okay. Just going to warn you. There's some pretty cringy stuff that happens, but one of the so you have all these famous entertainers of the day. Ed, what's his name? Ed Gwynn.
Edmund Gwynn. Edwin.
The one that was the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland. Anyway, all the famous stars of the day are in it, including Joan Crawford and Betty Davis. And there's a number in it where Gypsy Rose Lee does her very famous the number that is spoofed in Pal Joey, and it's called like the philosophy of a stripper, and where she's talking and she takes hardly anything off, but it is delightful. It is absolutely delightful, and you really do see the artistry. Her son said that she used to use straight pins. She used to keep her clothes on with straight pins, and that's how she would do it so seamlessly and elegantly, taking it off. And how during lean years, it was his job to go down to the orchestra pit and collect all the straight pins because
She's not going to buy more of them.
she's not going to buy more of them.
Yeah.
So that was his job.
That was his job. She also performed in Vietnam with the USO. And her son has this gorgeous coat.
Oh, yeah.
And it's filled with all these patches from soldiers who thanked her for going out and entertaining them. I mean, she's just a remarkable person.
So let's see. Do we have any other clips that we can play?
Yeah, I have one more of Natalie Wood.
Okay, let's play that one. This is a clip of her first time she's ever announced as Gypsy, and her first time appearing in burlesque. What Herbie has just left the family right before she goes out on stage. So effectively her father has left them. And she's stuck with her mom, who is now sort of softly forcing her to strip. And I should say in the Karen Abbott bio, there's an allusion to Mama Rose was a thorn in their side all the way up until the very, very end, apparently. Both June and Louise. Constantly asking them for money, demanding money, and sort of threatening Louise to expose certain things that she doesn't quite, she's very like craftily alluding to. So Karen Abbott speculates that, perhaps things might have gotten like real bad. And maybe there was like, she was forced into sex work or something like that. Like, we don't really know. But certainly like this is a turning point for everybody. Turning point for her. June's gone.
Yeah.
Turning point for Herbie. He cannot go, and he's not going to go along with this. So he leaves them. As much as he loves them, he knows if he stays, he's only enabling them, and so he leaves. Mama Rose has taken a detour deep into the heart of Bad Parentville, and is like fine with her daughter not only playing in a burlesque house but now stripping. And really, really kind of forcing her into it. And Gypsy Louise just wants to be a good daughter and realizes, like much like June, all of these people are not gonna eat if she doesn't do this. So there she is, and she's still a kid. Cannot stress enough that she is a kid. Here we go. Natalie Wood, ladies and gentlemen.
Also broke her wrist. And so she was famous for always having a bangle. I'm obsessed with Natalie Wood. I've read like the biographies. She always had.
I listened to that whole podcast about her death. Did you?
Oh,
listen
of
to
course,
that?
yes. RJ do something.
I can't remember what it was called. Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything else, but. But yeah, that's unfortunately her death overshadowed her life, and it's she was 40 when she passed away, I believe. So I know, and she had so much to look forward to. She just really and also just how stunning. I mean, I know it's objectifying, but I
know, but she's. I mean, it's a little distracting almost how pretty she is. I mean, and it's what. Again, not a singer. That's her. That's her doing. That's her singing that. And at this point, she could insist on that, but not really not a singer.
Right.
Famous for two of the biggest blockbuster musical movies of all time. So there it is, and that's because she's such a good actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so book versus movie.
I'm going to take the book because I love all of the adaptations and I'm totally discovering something new each time. And I can't recommend enough the Bette Midler one. If you get a chance.
Oh, it's so good.
And I was saying to Margot off the air, we're both named Margot. Cynthia Gibb plays June, and she's amazing.
Yeah.
She played Karen Carpenter too. You remember that TV movie?
Oh yeah.
I just saw a documentary recently, and she was one of the talking heads about Karen. Yeah. Yeah, she's super talented, and I love that one joke they have where June, like, because the baby was June, right? And okay, so June could do splits and sing at the top of her lungs and everything, and then so Rose comes out to be the follow-up to her, and she can just barely do the split, and it's so funny when it's done correctly. And I think Cynthia Gibb does such a good job with that.
Hola, everybody. My name's Louise.
and her mama Rose like, okay, that's a take. That's good. We can improve upon that.
I loved that the Bette Midler one.
Oh, it's so good. And I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's streaming. They're all great though. They all have something. Yeah. And I can also I can't recommend enough. You go to YouTube, 2007 Gypsy Patti LuPone, and just see the version of that from somebody's seat in the balcony. Oh. It's so amazing.
She's so great. She's so great.
Whenever people say how demanding she is, I was like, good for her. Because
she should be.
Do what she says.
Patti LuPone.
Talking about Patti LuPone.
Do you want to hit or not?
Yes. Don't take your phone out in the show. She will call you out. Wear your mask if she tells you to wear a mask, and do what she tells you to do.
Yeah, the book is so good. It's so it's awfully good. And I really do recommend June Havoc's. The first one's called Early Havoc.
Great title.
And the second one's called More Havoc. And I think there's a third one, but I've only read the first two. If there is a third one, get them all. Get them all. You will enjoy them. It's kind of hard to beat because they are so well written. It's kind of hard to beat their firsthand accounts. However they choose to color them and tell them,
right,
is interesting to me, and certainly. And the Karen Abbott one is very interesting too, but like I say, it gives you a lot more of the history of it. And particularly since the real version of what happened, even though we have limited access to all the data about, did she kill two people or just the one? The second murder, by the way, we started talking about it, but I don't think we finished. But when Mama June was running that rooming house, she had a woman that she possibly hard to say, but she had a woman that she was particularly involved in, and the story is that the story is supposedly the woman made a pass at Louise, right. I think it was, and Mama June shot her and killed her, and somehow. I mean, and if you read the account, this lady was murdered.
She didn't fall out of a window or something, right?
No, she was shot. And yet somehow it's ruled a suicide. Somehow, she did have a history. So there's that. So they kind of use that to kind of, but she didn't have anyway. It seems like she murdered her. That's all I'm saying. Don't know for sure. There's no way to know for sure, but it sure looks like it. So yeah, And that's just some of it. Like I said, the whole like the KKK thing, and those girls saw a lot of stuff that no human should ever see, let alone a child. Just to
Right.
put it that way. Like there is some real like, oh, I wish I hadn't read that in the Abbott book. Like, oh, I didn't need to know that.
Yeah.
Whoa. Whoa. So that they took that and made this work of art is terrific, is wonderful. And I think I love the story of this musical. I love those characters very much. I love Herbie.
I love the music. I love the
Yeah.
songs. I mean, I
The
love
boy,
Sondheim. I mean,
it says something that you can see. Just let me entertain you, let alone like the whole thing, like with the Star Spangled Banner and all of that. You see, the audience in this show see that. I don't even know how many times you see somebody singing "Let Me Entertain You." Do you see June sing it like at least 3 times, I think, and you see Gypsy sing it a number of times, and you're riveted.
mhm.
You're not like, oh, this again, because sometimes we've had a musical where that happens, and we're like, oh, can we really? We got to go this. We're gonna go back to this song again. This is not that. It's great. It's beautiful music, wonderful, character development, I think. In this movie, I think the direction is awesome. It's not always 100% in the different versions, in varying degrees, but here, I think they really knock it out of the park. They don't allow any of the weaker stuff to make it into the final picture. I think they made all the right decisions in what they decided to put and not put into the final version. It's great, but you can't beat it's such an, incredible story, and we have at least 2 versions.
Mhm.
Um, so, yeah,
You and I
I'm
both, by the way, we're
uh,
nonfiction writers, and we've
yeah,
interviewed people and about an event or whatever, and you'll get different accounts from people who will
sure you will.
write in your face will just say, "No, no,
Yeah,
I was there, and this is what he said," or that whatever. So
yeah,
yeah, you have to keep that in mind. I mean, people's
and I
memories.
like that. I guess
Yeah,
I kind of like when people give me 2 different versions of what
yeah,
happened, and I kind of especially enjoy it when they share their version and I'm like, "Oh, that's your takeaway? Huh, okay."
yeah.
Not what I would have thought, but that's so interesting to me that somebody could yeah, I find that really fascinating to when you have those 2 differing accounts of the same. I mean, they were literally in the same room, these 2 women, and they have very different takes on what was going on. So, yeah, I'm gonna give it to, um, both of their memoirs. I'm gonna give it to, Early Havoc in particular because it is about that time period in her life, and because the dance marathon stuff,
It's
she writes about it, but the way that she writes about it, firsthand knowledge as one of those it's amazing. It really is. And also Gypsy's book is so just get it. Just you wanna own that book. It was out of print or you couldn't get your hands on it for so many years,
right.
and now it's back. Get it while you can, because it's only gonna go away again. So,
And the
yeah,
audiobook
I'm
too.
gonna
That's
give
what
it
I
to the
listen
book.
to. Yeah.
The books. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what we're doing this week, and what are we doing next week?
We didn't decide, so let's
We did not.
figure out.
I
I'll
sort of
get
like I say, I entertain the idea of doing Pal Joey, but, because it does have that number about, Gypsy Rose Lee, but the storyline of it is just meh. It's based on a series of short stories that were then put into a novel, but it's not the greatest. It's not I'm sorry, I'm it's not my favorite. There's some good numbers in it, and the movie is with Frank Sinatra, but nah.
yeah. Well, we have Sweet Charity. Uh, what else was I looking at? Little Shop of Horrors. Um, we could do like the original movie and then the musical. Uh, Quadrophenia by The Who. Some of the let's see. We'll take this out of the audio version. Billy Elliot, Mamma Mia. Uh,
Let's do Billy Elliot.
Absolutely. I
I've
saw
never
it
seen the
Broadway.
musical one. I've
Oh,
never
it's
seen the musical one,
so
but you saw it?
good. Yeah, it's great. Oh, the
But I
music
loved that
is
the original
wonderful.
movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do Billy Elliot. So we'll compare it
Yeah.
to the original film to the musical version.
Yeah.
I love that. Yes, yes, yes.
Exciting. I'm excited about that. I haven't seen that in so long, and I've never seen the musical one. I just have never gotten around to it.
It's really good.
But I loved that movie, the original
Yeah.
movie, and it was such a great soundtrack, as I recall. Okay.
All right. Well, that's what we're doing next. And as you can tell, we're always looking for suggestions. So all those places I mentioned at the top of the show, if you could, reach out to us, that would be great. Our email, once again, is book-versus-movie-podcast, spelled out at gmail.com. If you'd like some stickers, once again, send us your address and one of us will get them out to you. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all my social media callouts are at She's Not Your Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me at brooklynfitchick.com. I'm at brooklynfitchick for Threads and Instagram. I'm at Brooklyn Margot for TikTok and Blue Sky. And then you can go with my name for YouTube, Margot Donahue. And I have lots of clips on all those places that take video. So follow me there. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back soon with Billy Elliot.